Welcome back to Web 1 Picks. I'm Artem MMA. I'm going to be talking about the 21 fight long card that is Bellator 299 Eblen versus Edwards, and is going to be taking place in Dublin, Ireland. So it should be a pretty fun card, but 21 fights is ridiculous. I do understand that Bellator's going through a lot right now, and they probably are trying their best to get through their fighters' contracts as much as they can before they sell or collapse or continue. Who knows what's going on with Bellator right now, but what I do know for a fact is this card is too long, but it's still on this weekend anyway. And yes, I am going to be talking about all 21 fights. I'm in a pretty good mood. I had a chemistry test that I was super stressed about. I thought it went pretty well, so I'm in a good mood. I'm going to talk about all 21 fights, but if it went poorly, I was probably only going to talk about 12 fights. But yes, I did go ahead and I did look into all 21 fights. No, it wasn't fun, and no, honestly, I wouldn't really recommend you do it either, but, I mean, I did it, so please do like the video, and please do check out the We Want Picks premium membership service as well, if you do want to check out my articles for Dana White's Contender Series, and also the UFC, and also Bellator, and also non-MMA stuff as well. I talked about Joyce versus Zhang, which is going to be happening this weekend as well, on the articles, on the We Want Picks premium membership that you can see just there below, and you can also get the 3-day free trial by signing up with the code ARTEM, and you can cancel at any time during that 3-day free trial. And now with that being said, let's just get into Bellator 299 Eblen versus Edwards, which is a 21 fight long card. Now, just before we do get into the first fight, I do want to note a couple of things. The first thing is that Tapology's bout order for the card is probably wrong, but I am going to go off their bout order right now. And the second thing is, I am going to be getting through the predictions as fast as I can while giving you guys as much information as I can, because I've got 21 fights to get through. So now let's start with the first one. It is Khasan Magomedsharipov taking on Piotr Niedzielski. This is the step up in competition we've been waiting for Khasan. He's 8-0, he's not even 23 years old yet, and he is showing a very well-rounded game. The thing about Khasan is he's not as much of a striker as his brother. He does mix in his striking with his wrestling. His striking is very good. He's very accurate. He looks insane on the pads, but he wrestles a lot more than Zabit does. A lot of the time he is going in for takedowns. A lot of the time he gets those takedowns that he goes for. And as I said, Piotr Niedzielski is a step up in competition. Yes, he is on a 2-fight losing streak, but if you do look at that record, at one point he was 17-4. That record was a lot more impressive than it is right now. And the 2 losses that he did have are pretty respectable. Richie Smellin, in my opinion, is a pretty good fighter. He did beat Pedro Carvalho, which is an incredible win as well. But when it comes down to it, I actually am going to go with Khasan Magomedsharipov at minus 550. I think it's a little bit risky. I'm going to be honest. This is a big step up in competition for Khasan. He took on a 7-4 opponent and finished him. But the win over Jose Sanchez, he showed off a lot of his wrestling in that matchup. But Jose Sanchez, you know, wasn't that great. He had a pretty padded record, but I do believe in Khasan Magomedsharipov. I am going to go with Khasan actually to win a decision in this matchup. I think he can mix in the striking with the wrestling and get it done over Piotr Niedzielski. The next fight we're going to go with is Sergey Bilostenniy taking on Kasim Aras. And Sergey Bilostenniy is a very interesting one to me, because I'm pretty sure I picked Tyrell Fortune to beat him in his fight, which he ended up losing by disqualification. But if he didn't punch Tyrell Fortune in the back of the head, he would have won that fight by knockout. And that kind of is how Sergey's fights go. He knocks people out, but if he doesn't knock you out in the first round, he has shown signs of slowing down a lot. He does clinch quite a bit. He probably clinches a little bit too much for a powerful striker like him. But if you do look at his record, most of his wins are by KO in the first round. And if he does get a little bit extended, he can slow down a bit. He did slow down a bit over Fernando Rodriguez Jr., and I did pick Tyrell Fortune to beat him. Fortune did beat him, but it was by disqualification. It really doesn't count, but I think he can knock out Kasim Aras. I feel like Kasim Aras is also a wrestler. I think that Sergey's going to be the better striker. Sergey is quite athletic for heavyweight as well. We haven't Kasim get a win in Bellator yet. He has been taking on decent competition outside of Bellator. Lost to Davy on Franklin, who's a decent prospect in his own right in a way at heavyweight. But I'm going to go with Sergey to win by knockout in the first round. But if Sergey doesn't get that first round KO, maybe we could see Kasim Aras start to take over, but I'm going to trust Sergey in his power and his athleticism. That's not even a word. I cannot say it right now. You know exactly what I'm saying. That is so embarrassing. Asael Adjouj taking on Ibrahim Al-Faqih Hassan. This is going to be an interesting one because Asael Adjouj is definitely the prospect that they're probably trying to build here. I think Asael Adjouj is actually a very good fighter. 6-1, a couple of good wins, a good win over Liam McCracken. Now, Liam McCracken is going through a little bit at the moment. He was hit by a bus, so I do wish all the best to Liam McCracken in his recovery. But as for this fight, it was a very good win by Asael Adjouj, because I thought Liam McCracken was actually going to beat him, and McCracken, in my opinion, is a really, really good prospect. And then he beat Georges Sasu. Now he takes on a wrestler, grappler, and Ibrahim. Now Ibrahim, when he gets the fight down to the ground, he is actually very, very impressive, and I do believe that he is a coach at a pretty big gym himself. And he does have his own MMA career. As you can see, he's 4-1 as a pro. I believe he went 4-1 as an amateur as well. He won by buggy choke in his last fight, which was impressive. But as I said, when he gets the fights down to the ground, that is where he gets his best work done. And Asael Adjouj, in his last fight against Georges Sasu, Sasu got him down in the first round and was able to control him for the entirety of that round. And then it really was on Adjouj to get it done with his striking, with his kickboxing after that first round. But I do believe in this matchup here, I believe that Asael Adjouj has worked on that takedown defense, and I do believe he should be able to keep the fight on the feet, and I think he can defend the takedowns over Ibrahim and win this fight by decision. Once again, it's just one of those fights where Adjouj is a -400 favorite. I think Ibrahim does have a pretty good chance in this matchup. It is a striker versus grappler matchup. I'm going to go with the striker and Asael Adjouj, who, in my opinion, is a pretty good prospect. I do believe he should get it done over Khasan in this matchup. And now we can move up the card to Davy Gallen taking on Attila Korkmaz. And one thing I am going to say about this matchup is, although I am picking Davy Gallen, I think Attila Korkmaz is a really, really good underdog in this matchup. And I was really impressed with what I saw on tape. But the issue with me in this fight is I think he is going to be a lot smaller than Davy Gallen in the matchup. Now, Davy Gallen is also 5'8". They're both not the tallest guys for 155 pounds. But Attila Korkmaz, he did fight at 155 in his last fight against Carlo Caput. And he was a lot smaller than Carlo Caput. He was shorter, and he was the less muscular guy as well. And now he's going to be taking on Gallen, who is a pretty experienced fighter at this point in his career. He's got 31 pro fights, I believe, if I can do my math right now. It's almost midnight. I just had a test today, so you got to bear with me a little bit. Davy Gallen, he's a bit well-rounded, really. Like, in my opinion, he's a little bit more of a striker recently, but he really did start out as a dominant grappler. Most of his wins have come by submission, and a lot of them in the first round. But he did retire Ross Pearson with one of the craziest KOs I've ever seen in my life, a rolling thunder kick KO, and that was Ross Pearson's last MMA fight. He has beaten a couple of good guys. Kane Moussa's a good win. Charlie Leary, although he's 17-11, has beaten some good guys in his career. And in his most recent matchup, he did take on Davy Gallen. He was in a submission. Sorry, he took on Saul Rogers. He was in a submission, and the referee stopped it too early. Davy Gallen wasn't out. He didn't tap. He wasn't really working his way out of the submission, but it was almost like he was just kind of waiting for Saul Rogers to release it. The referee stopped it too early. It became a no contest. Attila Korkmaz on the feet, I think he's pretty good. He's actually quite fast, but the problem is he crashes in, and then he just stays in the pocket. It's almost like he crashes in, and then when he gets into the pocket, he kind of just hangs out there. And I feel like a really good, slick striker like Davy Gallen could capitalize on that. I have seen him get hit by counters quite a bit in his fights. And in his matchup against Carlo Caput, he was taken down very, very easily. But Carlo Caput just made a very big mistake when he was on top, and he ended up getting heel hooked by Attila Korkmaz. He tapped immediately. It was a really, really nice submission. Attila Korkmaz's corner went absolutely crazy. But I'm going to go with Davy Gallen here. I mean, as I said, Korkmaz is pretty small for the weight class. I thought he was really small compared to Carlo Caput. And I think that Davy Gallen should be able to kind of just be able to outmuscle him, get takedowns if he needs to. He's going to have to stay safe, though. And I think he should be able to outstrike him in the counters on the feet as well. So give me Gallen to win this matchup. Now we move on to Luca Poclit taking on Roman Faraldo. And I really, really wanted to pick Roman Faraldo. Man, I don't want to give up on Roman Faraldo just yet. He's so exciting. He's 8-1, but all of his wins are by knockout. 6 of them in the first round. I mean, how could you not cheer for him? But the thing is, I feel like this is just a really bad matchup for him. Now, yes, Luca Poclit is 34 years old, but he is a wrestler and he is a grappler, and I do believe that if he can get Roman Faraldo down to the ground, he will be having a lot of success in this matchup and probably could find a submission pretty late on into the fight. Faraldo last lost to Levan Chikali, which was kind of like a big coming out party for Levan Chikali. I thought it was a good performance from him. He looked really, really slick on the feet and just kind of outclassed Faraldo. Now, Poclit, as I said, is a wrestler. He's a grappler who's coming off one of the craziest submissions I've ever seen. I don't even know how to describe it. It was called a hallucinator choke. Apparently, it's the first time a hallucinator choke has ever happened in a major MMA promotion. It was almost like he had he went for a takedown, he had his arms, I don't even know how to explain it, man, you're gonna have to watch it, there's videos of it online. It was crazy, and then he did manage to beat Oliver in camp using his wrestling and his grappling. Could I see Roman Faraldo winning by KO in the first round? Yes, and honestly, I'd be quite happy if that happened, because I like Faraldo, I think he's fun, but I do have to pick the wrestler in Poclit, because I do think it's a pretty tough matchup for Faraldo. And I think Poclit could probably work for a submission in the third round after he kind of really works on Faraldo, gets him down, frustrate Faraldo. So give me Poclit to win this matchup by late submission or decision. Now, Mansour Barnaoui taking on JJ Wilson is a very, very interesting fight to me, because you've got Barnaoui at minus 275 and JJ Wilson at plus 200. And I have seen a lot of people online questioning maybe Barnaoui's commitment to MMA, just because he didn't really look like he didn't really look super hungry in his last fight, is what I'll say, when he took on Brent Primus. Now, I know that sounds disrespectful, and who am I to kind of say that about Mansour Barnaoui? But man, like, the same guy that fought Brent Primus is not the same guy that was competing for the $1 million tournament in Road to UFC, in Road FC all those years ago. And yes, he did win a big tournament there. He took years off, come back to Bellator, beat Adam Piccolotti, looked really good. The hype was real. He lost to Brent Primus. It was just kind of Now, JJ Wilson's an interesting case to me, because he's a former featherweight. He's from New Zealand. I'm from New Zealand. I like JJ Wilson. I feel like you kind of have to. He's a fun fighter. But I didn't think he was all that massive for 145 pounds. I believe he missed weight a couple of times, struggled to make the weight, and now he's, a lot of times actually, and now he's moved up to 155 pounds. He lost to Gadzi Ravadanov, he was out-wrestled. He took on Vladimir Tokov, and he managed to win that fight despite being controlled for most of the fight, because he's throwing up elbows and just strikes and submissions. But for the most part, I think JJ Wilson wants this fight on the feet. But the problem is Barnaoui is really, really dangerous, or at least he has been in the past, many years ago, when he did win that massive tournament all the way back in the day. I am going to go with Barnaoui to win by submission. He's got so many submissions on his record already. He did submit Adam Piccolotti, who in my opinion would give JJ Wilson a pretty tough fight. So I'm going to go with Barnaoui in this matchup. I'm going to go with him by submission, but I kind of want JJ Wilson to win, because I think he'll be a fun signing to the UFC if he ended up getting released from Bellator, if they were purchased or fizzled out or something like that. So, I don't know. We'll see what happens in that situation. But now we can move on up the card to Darragh taking on Jelle Zeegers. And it just comes down to one thing. This card is in Ireland. Darragh is 4-0. He's 25 years old, and he's a minus 800 favorite. Who do you think Bellator wants to win in this matchup? They want Darragh to win. Now, Darragh is a good grappler. He's pretty big for the weight class as well. 6 foot with a 72-inch reach at 145 is quite impressive. He's already got wins in Bellator as well, over some pretty good competition in his own right. A couple of good amateur wins as well. Jelle Zeegers' wins are just over debuting guys, and he hasn't fought for a year and a half. That's kind of all I've got to say about this fight. I'm sorry if you wanted a big in-depth breakdown, but the picks Darragh by submission in the first 2 rounds. And now we can move on up to the next one, which is Kieran Clark taking on Przemysław Górny. Now, once again, it kind of comes down to another thing. Who do you think Bellator wants to win this fight? It's in Ireland. Kieran Clark is Irish. But one thing I am going to say is, in my years of watching Cage Warriors, the amount of times I have seen good, undefeated, up-and-coming guys lose to random Polish fighters with bad records, I could probably count more than 5. Over the last few years, these Polish fighters with not the greatest records in the world, they're brought in to lose. They just win. They just win. I mean, it happened like twice within like 2 months earlier this year. I can't really recall exactly, but if you do go through Cage Warriors Tapology, you will see exactly what I'm talking about. So with that logic, yes, Górny could win this fight, but I don't think he does. At the end of the day, Górny, all of his wins aren't over fighters that are as good as Kieran Clark. Kieran Clark is he's 5'8" for 145. I was talking about Darragh there for a second, but he's already beat some pretty good guys. Leonardo Sinise, 11-5, 6-3 opponent, 7-2 opponent. He's actually had his whole career built up in Bellator. Sorry, I was trying to think of who it was. When you record all of these in only a couple of takes, it can be quite hard to remember. I am going with Clark though. I think he submits Przemysław Górny, and at the end of the day, it is a step down in competition, in my opinion, from some of the guys that he's fought in the past. One thing I'm going to note though, is fighting at 135 could be an issue for Clark. It does say that he missed weight in a couple of these occasions, but I do believe that they were catch weight. Now, in this matchup here, they both actually missed weight, but I don't know if that's still kind of held. But the point is, this fight was actually booked for 150 pounds. I want to see Clark at 135. I wonder how he's going to look on the scales. I thought it would be something to bring up. Now we can move on up to Charlie Ward taking on Grigory Babine. And I don't think that Bellator's going to get what they want here. They probably want Charlie Ward as an almost 43-year-old guy to get that last win before he retires. I've seen Charlie Ward fight on a lot of Dublin cards, a lot of Ireland cards, I should say, for Bellator. And he has won, but he's also lost. The thing about Charlie Ward, he's actually a pretty good brawler, and he is a knockout artist. He's got a lot of KOs on his record, but the problem is, to his last KO, you've got to go all the way back down to 2020. I think if he's going to beat Grigory Babine, I think he actually kind of needs a finish. Now, I know you will be looking at the age of Grigory Babine as well, because he is almost 40 years old himself. But for a 40-year-old middleweight, I was actually very impressed with how athletic he is. As a striker, he's a little bit sloppy, but he's really, really fast, and he's got pretty good fast twitch muscle. He's got pretty good counters, and his grappling as well really, really stuck out to me. But the thing is, well, about Babine is he kind of is finish or be finished. Now, all of his wins, for the most part, not all of them, 16 out of 22, are in the very first round. That is very, very impressive. When he took on Mike Shipman, he dominated Mike Shipman. He knocked him down in like the first 20 seconds of the fight, I want to feel, and then almost got a mounted guillotine, and then Shipman ended up getting up, and then Babine knocked him out pretty ruthlessly. Knocked him out cold, to be honest. It was pretty brutal. I don't think he does the same to Charlie Ward. I think that we might actually see Babine trying to get this fight down to the ground using wrestling and not knockdowns. And I do think that Babine probably is going to find a submission in this matchup. I know Ward is a tough guy, and he wasn't finished by Fabian Edwards and Mike Shipman. But Babine is just a much more aggressive fighter. Now, that can be to his detriment, but it's worked for him for a long time now. And yes, I know he's 40 years old, but I do believe he does get a finish over Charlie Ward in this fight. The next fight is Peter Queally taking on Daniel Maselli. I don't know if this is going to be like a retirement for Peter Queally, but this is the perfect fight for Queally to get a finish. 3 of Peter Queally's wins are by finish. They're all by knockout, and then the rest are by decision. But man, he should be able to knock out Daniel Maselli. Lesser fighters have been able to do it recently. 5 losses by KO, 4 of them in the first round, a complete submission or bust guy. Peter Queally should knock him out. I feel like this might be a Peter Queally retirement or something like that, and Bellator's just throwing him a bone and doing him a favor, because I'm telling you guys, this is a very winnable fight for Peter Queally, and a fight that he should be able to get by finish. Maselli is a grappler, he's a wrestler, he's pretty good at grappling, but the thing is, on the feet, he's got absolutely nothing. And every time he takes on anyone with any talent whatsoever, he just gets knocked out. You know, if you look at his wins, all of them are by fighters with losing records. And every time he's lost, it's when he's taken on someone with any talent and he's been knocked out. Peter Queally, he did fight for the Bellator title relatively recently against Patricky Pitbull in a rematch. Yes, he has lost since then, but man, Bellator's doing him a big favor in this one, and he should be able to win this fight by knockout. If he doesn't win this fight by knockout, I will be pretty surprised, I'm going to be honest. Now we've got Nicolo Soli taking on Romain Debieni, and this one is close. I feel like this one's pretty close. I feel like everyone is on Soli, but if Debieni did get a win, I wouldn't be super surprised. I am on Nicolo Soli though. Nicolo Soli at 170 is a pretty long-ranging guy. He's 6'2" with a 71-inch reach, and that is how he fights. He does fight from range, and he does kind of just keep you at distance and win from range. Throws a lot of long shots, throws a lot of kicks, throws a lot of leg kicks. Now, his takedown defense is a little bit of a worry at times. He was taken down in his fight against Daniel Cassell relatively easily, but he was able to throw up submissions. Yes, I do know that it was 3 years ago, or 4 years ago now, but he's still getting taken down by fighters that he probably shouldn't be taken down by. And Romain Debieni just knocked out Barama Kamara, who was a fighter that Soli just had a pretty close fight against. If you do look at Debieni, he does actually have some pretty good wins on his career against some pretty good competition, and for a couple of good promotions as well. Hexagon and Atomic are 2 promotions that have actually produced a couple of good fighters. He also fought against Machej Pinaz for Octagon, and Pinaz is one good striker, man. Like, this is a guy with like 70 kickboxing fights or something absolutely ridiculous, amateur and pro, I should add. But Man, I'm going to go with Nicolo Soli. I do believe that he should be able to outstrike Romain Devien for 3 rounds. It's going to be a close fight. If Devien won, I wouldn't be super surprised. But I do like the ability of Soli to keep his opponents at range. And I think he should be able to do that against Debieni here. Now we move on up the card. Sharapenko taking on Mackenzie Stiller. This is one, again, I really thought about picking Mackenzie Stiller, but I just don't know how I feel about picking a 1-0 fighter, and her only win was over Maria Henderson, who is Benson Henderson's wife. Now, she wasn't meant to win that fight. I thought she had a pretty good chance to win. I didn't pick her to win. But if you do look at Mackenzie Stiller, purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, black belt in Judo, and that is her game. She is a grappler. She is a very much a submission fighter. All of her wins in her entire career, amateur and pro, are by submission in the first round. And our opponent, Sharapenko, is also a grappler for the most part. Most of her wins are also by submission. So you're definitely going to be into a submission sort of grappling sort of fight, I would say, in this one. But when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, Stella has never ever seen a second round. She still hasn't fought the competition that Sharapenko has, because she did fight a 3-1 opponent, 4-4. I guess like you're kind of looking, it's like, but at the end of the day, it is just still better competition than Stella fought, which was the 1-0 Maria Henderson. So I feel like if Mackenzie Stiller can get this win, though, it would be very, very impressive. But I am just going to go with, I guess, what is the safest pick to make, which is just Penko to win this matchup against Stiller. I don't know if Stiller's got, like, 3 rounds of cardio. I don't even know if she's got 2 rounds of cardio. So we're about to find out in this matchup, I guess. Now we can move on up the card to Kenny Moknuana taking on Josh O'Connor. Now, this is a matchup between 2 good prospects, and the prospects are going to cancel each other out. Someone's going to lose, and someone's going to win and continue. And I do believe that the fighter that is going to win is Kenny Moknuana. Now, Kenny is a striker that does wrestle as well. He's definitely more of an opportunistic wrestler. He doesn't go out there into a fight trying to like desperately dive in for takedowns halfway across the cage. He kind of just goes for them when the opportunity arises. He's actually very, very good at like having good reactions, just picking his spots. He's a good striker. His nickname is Black Diamond. If Blood Diamond gets kicked out from the UFC, maybe he could become Blood Diamond, because I think that is an absolutely awesome nickname. But anyway, I think Kenny wins. At the end of the day as well, he's fought much better competition. He's fought a couple of decent guys for Bellator. He's fought for UAE Warriors as well, which is a promotion that I do respect. And Josh O'Connor's entire career, he's just been spoon-fed at the end of the day. Like, yes, he did win one good win over a fighter at PFL, but when it comes down to it, 4-8 opponent that won by injury, opponent that won by leg kicks that was 7-35. He knocked out a guy that was 11-17. Like, come on, like your gym or your manager or whoever, they're setting you up, man. Like, come on. Like, Kenny Moknuana is at least been in Bellator, fighting pretty decent guys. Not to say that Josh O'Connor isn't skilled at all. I'm just trying to say that, man, I just have not seen this guy fight anyone good. And I have seen Moknuana take on someone good. So I'm going to go with Kenny to win this matchup. Now we move on to Mark Ewan taking on Noah Gugnon. Once again, this is a matchup that is going to cancel out a prospect, but the prospect that I do believe is going to win is Mark Ewan. I think Mark Ewan is probably one of the best prospects to come out of Scotland recently, and he's coming off a really, really good win over Kyrilliev, who was a striker. And honestly, it was interesting because as soon as Mark Ewan started to put the hands on him, Kyrilliev just started kind of backing up and was almost like he was scared of him. And then the inevitable did happen. Mark Ewan knocked him out in the first round. Very, very good win. Now, it is also worth noting, though, that Mark Ewan does have wrestling in his background, that he can wrestle, and he does wrestle in a lot of fights, but I think he just recognized that he could knock out Kyrilla, and he did that. But at the end of the day, he's taking on Noah Gugnon. Now, Noah Gugnon, on paper, has some really, really good wins himself. He beat a 3-0 guy, a 5-0 guy, and a 2-0 guy. Now, all of those records look so good on paper, but they are still a little bit padded, but I'm not going to take away the fact that Noah Gugnon was able to win them. This matchup against David Hawker, it was a pretty brutal KO. I believe it was like an elbow in the pocket that dropped him. Of all places to find the fight, I found it on TikTok. So, I mean, sometimes it's like Reddit, sometimes it's TikTok, sometimes you can go to like weird websites and find it as well. But anyway, I found this one on TikTok, and it was David Hawker kind of crashed forward, Noah Gugnon timed an elbow, and then Gugnon followed up with some ground and pound and knocked him out, and the ref was a bit slow to it, I'll tell you that much. It was actually quite hard to watch. But I'm going to go with Mark Ewan. At the end of the day, Yes, Noah Gugnon has looked good against good competition, and yes, maybe he could win this fight, but Mark Ewan, at the end of the day, I mean, he's really, really good in my eyes. I think that he's one of the better prospects out of Scotland, as I did say before. I think he can put their hands on Noah Gugnon, and he probably could take him down as well. I think if he did take down Noah Gugnon, it probably would be his easiest path to victory, because I haven't really seen Noah Gugnon kind of face someone that's been trying to actively take him down all the time. So give me Ewan. I think Ewan wins this matchup. I don't know how I feel about a knockout, but definitely could be on the cards for sure. Now we've got Luke Trainer taking on Laurinus Urbanavicius. This is a very, very odd one for me, because Laurinus, I think, is actually a pretty good fighter. The problem is he just does not fight. Yes, he fought 8 months ago and took on a guy that was making his debut. But before that, he hadn't fought for 3 years, and he took on a guy that was very, very experienced, managed to beat him over 3 rounds. Impressive. And then he's just, like, I mean, like 16-4 win is great, but like 0-3, like what's going on here, you know? Like, are we building the record? Are we fighting good guys? Are we trying to go on a run to the UFC or Bellator or something? But now he's here, but he's taking on the guy that Bellator's trying to build. Luke Trainer, he was just in one of those fights where it was prospect versus prospect, and he won. He won against Sullivan Corley, who was a guy that Bellator was trying to build. Sullivan Corley had beaten Big Tuna in the past. If you don't know who Big Tuna is, that's a big win for Sullivan Corley, and Corley just got outclassed on the mat. Luke Trainer kind of just took his back and submitted him within the first round. It was within 3 minutes. He made it way too easy. And before that, he won by submission due to rear naked choke against Lucas Alcina, who was a decent fighter himself as well. Yes, he lost to Simone Biong, but Simone Biong, at this point, sometimes he looks fantastic, sometimes he doesn't look so great. Who really knows? But one thing I do know for a fact is Luke Trainer is a finisher. He is really good. He's 6'6" for the weight class. He's absolutely massive, and his grappling is really good. Laurinus, well-rounded fighter, but like, come on, man, he's not fighting often at all. 9 wins by KO in the first round as well, which is cool. But like, over who, man? Like, when he takes on good competition, he's not knocking them out in the first round. He's not going to knock out Luke Trainer in the first round, in my opinion. I think Trainer submits him. Probably second round. I'm going to give Urbanavicius the respect that I'm not picking him to lose by first round finish. But I think Luke Trainer is going to be able to get it done in the second. The next fight is going to be Brian Moore taking on Otto Rodriguez, and I do like Otto Rodriguez in this matchup, although the odds are very close. Otto Rodriguez is coming off a very, very good win 2 years ago against Carlos Augusto da Silva, who was 19-2 at the time, and you might think that was a padded 19-2 record. I can tell you, if you do look at it on Tapology, that's a legit record, and he had beaten some really, really good competition. But Carlos Augusto da Silva, I believe, was coming off a 2-year layoff going into that matchup, but someone else was coming off a layoff into that matchup, and that was Otto Rodriguez, and he was coming off a 4-year layoff going into that matchup. This guy's fought twice in the last 6 years. I don't really know why, because he has a pretty good record. You know, he would have been 12-1 at the time 6 years ago, 29 years old, probably in his prime, probably only a couple of really good wins away from getting that big call to a big show. And he just took time off. I'm not too sure what went on. Maybe something personal went on. Maybe he fell out of love with the sport. Things like that do happen. But, man, like, I feel like maybe something could have been with Otto Rodriguez, potentially. But now he's taking on Brian Moore. I've seen Brian Moore out-grappled in the past. I think we see it again. As I said, Otto Rodriguez, his win over Carlos Augusto da Silva, it was so impressive to me. He got takedowns at will. He controlled the fight. He dominated the fight. It was really boring, but it was still a dominant performance, and I was really, really impressed with what I did see out of him. Now, Brian Moore, he's a relatively older guy for the weight class. He did beat Luca Levine in Bellator in his last matchup. He did beat, you know, he's not really beating the best guys, is he? But Brian Moore, he has been out-wrestled before. He has been out-grappled before. I think Otto Rodriguez can do that same thing as well. Also worth noting, Brian Moore moving up a weight class for this fight. Otto Rodriguez, I don't think that he looked too small when he last fought at 145. I'm going to go with him to win by decision, as is the most of people on Tapology. Now we've got Levan Chakali taking on Sabah Hamasi. Levan Chakali started off his pro career with a bang, dude. He started off hot. First round KOs, first minute KOs, and then he got into Bellator, and it just didn't quite work out, you know. No more first round KOs, no more KOs in general for Levan Chakali. But man, he wasn't fighting good guys, but he was looking pretty good doing it, wasn't he? And then he did take on Cole Crutchmer. Cole Crutchmer did beat him by decision, but Crutchmer's a good fighter himself. He's still in Bellator doing his own thing. And then, in my opinion, the big coming out party was the winner over Roman Faraldo, who I did say was on this card, and he is on this card, taking on a fighter earlier on. But I think that Levan Chikali against Sabah Hamasi can probably find a finish. If you look at Chikali, he's a very, very impressive striker, very, very technical, very, very powerful, and a Sabah Hamasi. One thing that Sabah Hamasi loves doing is getting knocked out. He was in the UFC at one point. He got knocked out by Abdul Razak Al Hassan. He complained about the stoppage so much that they did the rematch. And then Abdul Razak Al Hassan knocked him out again in the first round. Again, and then he come over to Bellator. He gets knocked out by Paul Daly. He gets knocked out by Brennan Ward. And getting knocked out by Brennan Ward, like, come on, man. You just can't do that when you're taking on a technical, up-and-coming striker in Levan Chikali. Now, yes, I could see Sabah Hamasi winning this fight, absolutely. But I think we see Levan Chikali. I'm high on him. I mean, you can tell. I like Levan Chikali. I think he's a fantastic fighter. And I do believe that we will see him have a good performance against Sabah Hamasi here. And I do believe that we're going to see him get a KO. If he can defend the takedowns, keep the fight on the feet, he will be more technical than Sabah Hamasi. And he will have, in my opinion, better eyes in the pocket as well. I think that in the pocket he can get a good counter and hurt Hamasi and then finish him off. I like the idea of Levan Chikali getting his first KO win in so long. I think he gets it done, man. I really do. I think he can knock out Sabah Hamasi in this matchup. Now we move on to a fight which I'm just not that keen on, to be honest with you. Watching tape for this fight almost put me to sleep because it is almost midnight right now. Yes, it took me that long to research the card. Sinead Kavanagh taking on Sarah Collins. Now, Sarah Collins, she's the up-and-coming fighter in this matchup, but she's 4-0. She is from Australia, which is cool. I'm from New Zealand, so I do like supporting Australian fighters. But one thing I have noticed about Sarah Collins is she is kind of an expert in one position. She's an expert in the clinch, and then also kind of like in this arm throw position where she ends up, where is it, in this position here? Where is it? She ends up in the submission scarf hold against Pam Sorensen. She does this all the time. She does this all the time against all of her opponents. But the thing is, when she did get a fight extended over Jamie Eblen, I thought that she slowed down quite a bit. I did actually pick her to lose against Pam Sorensen, and that looked really, really bad because Pam Sorensen didn't win that fight at all. But I mean, I'm going to pick against Sarah Collins again. Like, I know that Sinead Kavanagh is the favourite, but she's not really the favourite on Tapology. I think that we see Sinead Kavanagh be able to defend the I guess like the clinch advances or the clinch attempts, the takedowns from Sarah Collins, keep the fight on the feet and win by decision. She will be the better striker in this fight. I think she'll have better cardio in this fight as well. And just overall, she's fought way better competition. You know, she did fight a 6-6 opponent, but she did beat Leah McCourt, who was a girl that Bellator was trying to build up for a long time. She lost to Chris Cyborg, but that does happen, you know. Like, she's beaten good fighters. Where Sarah Collins, she beat Pam Sorensen, who is pretty old and has on and off nights at times. And then before that, it's just kind of not the best competition, really. I'm going to go with Sinead Kavanagh to win this matchup. And now we move on. Mads Brunel taking on Daniel White Chow. I like Mads Brunel in this matchup, you know. I think that Mads Brunel should be able to get the takedowns over Daniel White Chow. Brunel is a wrestler that does go for takedowns relatively often, and once again, we have seen Daniel White Chow out-wrestled in the past. Now, yes, it was against Timur Kazriev, who Bellator was kind of trying to build up with White Chow, but one thing again, at the end of the day with White Chow, man, this guy has had so many fights in his career. 56 pro fights. Like, that is so underrated in my opinion. Like, you got to give him the respect for that. And so many finishes as well. Fought for so many promotions around the world. M1, he's fought as well, just everywhere. But his pro debut was in 2002 when he was 17 years old. And one thing I'm going to say about this period in time, I wasn't born yet, because I was born a little bit later on in 2002. So Daniel White Chow made his debut as a pro before I was even born. That is crazy. And he's still going, man. He's still going. He's still going strong. He's still beating pretty good guys. I just wanted to give Daniel White Chow's respect because I am picking him to lose to Mads Brunel. By decision, I thought that Mads Brunel looked really, really bad against Adam Borix. And he lost to Pedro Carvalho. Like, I mean, what's going on here? You know, like, I think Mads Brunel does beat Daniel White Chow, though. I think I did pick Mads Brunel to beat Justin Gonzalez, though. Justin Gonzalez is also a wrestler that shoots for takedowns relatively often. Brunel was able to out-wrestle him in those positions. I think he should be able to do the same to Daniel White Chow. And now we can move on to the co-main event. It's Aaron Pico taking on Pedro Carvalho. You've got a minus 900 favorite here. At the end of the day, that's kind of just what it comes down to. I mean, Aaron Pico's minus 900. But one thing about Aaron Pico that I am going to say is he is coming off a shoulder injury. He's coming off a shoulder injury relatively recently against Jeremy Kennedy. He did lose to injury there. I believe it was kind of like in the clinch in the first round. They tried to pop it back in between rounds. It was crazy to watch, man. And then he come back against James Gonzalez. A big step down in competition. He won that fight, and I feel like maybe Bellator is again just trying to give him a little bit more confidence, kind of going into like maybe future matchups against top guys, because Pedro Carvalho is an opponent that he should be able to beat pretty easily. I do like Pedro Carvalho. This guy wins as an underdog all the time. I think he was like plus 300 or plus 400 against Magomedsharipov Barnaoui when he beat him. I think he was an underdog against Daniel Whitechell and he beat him as well. But the thing about Aaron Pico's career, in my opinion, I think it was mismanaged by Bellator, to be honest with you. He come in as one of the hottest prospects in MMA history, and he lost his first fight. They literally made him debut against an 8-2 opponent. He lost that matchup, and then he went on a tear, fighting really, really good guys. But then he lost 2 fights in a row, and one of the best prospects in the world was all of a sudden 4-3 as a professional. It just didn't work out. But if you do look at him, insane boxing career history, insane career in wrestling as well. I mean, I feel like if his career was managed a little bit better, they really could have built Aaron Pico up to be like 15-0 at this point, not 11-4. But it is what it is. I'm going with Aaron Pico. I mean, Carvalho's tough though. Like, Pico might not finish him, I'm going to be honest with you. But I think Pico's a really good fighter. I think he might just beat him up for 3 rounds. No disrespect to Carvalho. I like Carvalho, but it's a tough matchup for him. And now we've got the main event. Johnny Eblen taking on Fabian Edwards. If the UFC is going to pick up a fighter from Bellator to sign to their promotion, I want it to be Johnny Eblen. I mean, Johnny Eblen and Patchy Mix would be perfect, but I think that Johnny Eblen would slot into the UFC's middleweight kind of division perfectly, because he's a wrestler at the top of middleweight. There's not really too many wrestlers, and I think that Johnny Eblen could give a lot of those guys a lot of trouble. He's the champion for a reason. He's beaten good guys. He does beat Anatoly Tokov, and he did beat Gegard Mousasi to win the belt as a massive underdog. I said in my breakdown for that fight, there's gonna be a time to fade Gegard Mousasi, but I don't think that time is now. It turned out the time was now. And then Fabian Edwards went out there and beat Gegard Mousasi himself. So now he's got that title shot. He beat Charlie Ward. He beat Lyoto Machida as well, which is kind of sad because he knocked him out. But if you haven't put 2 and 2 together yet, Fabian Edwards is Leon Edwards' brother, his younger brother. He fights at 185, and honestly, they have a pretty similar fighting style. They both are kickboxers. They both fight from range very, very well. I think Fabian Edwards is a pretty good kickboxer, and honestly, will very likely be the better striker in this matchup. Now, I do say that with a little bit of lack of confidence, because Johnny Eblen's striking is no joke as well. Yes, he does kind of strike to wrestle, like he's a bit more of a boxer crashing forward, but Johnny Eblen didn't get this far with only having wrestling. Now, the thing about Johnny Eblen, though, he isn't the most dangerous fighter in the world. Most of his wins are by decision, but at the end of the day, it is a nightmare matchup for Fabian Edwards. And I think we see Johnny Eblen go out there, get the takedowns against Fabian Edwards, and kind of just win the fight doing that. But could I see a world where the plus 310 underdog in Fabian Edwards beats Johnny Eblen from range? Potentially I could, honestly. But I am going to still go with Johnny Eblen to win by decision. It just occurred to me that I've gone through 21 fights, and I picked 21 favorites. I didn't pick a single underdog on the entire card. I didn't do it intentionally, I promise. Man, people aren't going to be happy about that, are they? But at the end of the day, man, I don't pick fights for odds. I pick fights for who I think is going to win. I think at times I did say fighters that were underdogs that would have a good chance of winning. But, I mean, that's what Bellator is at the end of the day. It's massive favorites. It really is. Let me know what you think of this 21 fight card. Let me know what you think of my predictions. And with all of that being said, I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you guys for watching if you managed to make it this far.